Hey there, Casey Bolsega, Senior Portfolio Manager here at Intrepid, and I'm excited for today's conversation as I get to dive in with Darcy Lee and we talk about investing in your startup success, how you can empower entrepreneurs to adapt and scale on their own terms. As I mentioned, I'm here with Darcy Lee, founder and CEO of Vida Nova. And Vida Nova provides fractional chief of staff services and business consulting. We'll dive more into what led her to start Vida Nova, as well as her vision of transforming the power of a fractional chief of staff. Darcy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing well. So first, just to start, for people who aren't maybe familiar with you, your background, your experience, share a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so what got me here is kind of a long, what I say is a long and circuitous journey. So I graduated from college with science degrees, brain sciences. I never really planned to get a job. I planned to do research and teach and stay in higher education. But I found myself a lot more interested in the application of the brain sciences and psychology in business. So for the past 20 years, I have worked in small to mid-sized businesses across a variety of business functions, project manager, account executive, director of sales, COO, VP of strategic growth. And I've worked with clients, like you said, from startups to small nonprofits, Fortune 500 companies like Harley Davidson and UPS. And the organizations that I've worked within have ranged from marketing to tech organizations. And so that's kind of like a real skinny, quick version of my background. And in October, I started Vita Nova.
And I know our paths have crossed a couple different times kind of throughout your journey, but Vida Nova is a new venture for you. So when you look at kind of everything, what led you to pursue this path in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, well, it is super exciting, super new. I think a lot of things went into it, and what I usually tell people is just it was time. So this year, my family experienced a really significant loss with somebody that we love dearly, and it really made me dig in and ask myself, am I living my best life? Am I truly using all my gifts and talents? Am I creating the life that I want? And I also realized earlier this year, as I was touring the football stadium down at IU, that I had graduated from college 20 years ago. And that was a pretty significant 20 years ago, like a pretty significant moment for me. And in all the roles that I've served in, I'm what my dad would call a utility player. So if there was a problem, if there's a challenge, people would look to me to solve it. So for those of us my age, Q and Vanilla Ice here. But I also saw opportunities that other people didn't see and connected dots that other people, weren't able to. So and in earlier this year, I began seeing roles at different companies with the title chief of staff. And I was really intrigued and interested with that. And the more descriptions that I read of how different companies, utilize the chief of staff, like what that meant, it felt like it like fit me perfectly. It was the best way to describe how I felt I could serve a business and bring all my gifts and talents to the table. So um, basically, I felt like the world was finally ready for me to say it that way. And I felt like I could do my best work as an entrepreneur, rather than working within a company. So you might say, hey, you saw all these chief of staff roles. Why didn't you apply for those? I love variety. It's part of how I've amassed so many different experiences and skill sets. I've worked with so many different clients and different roles. So I like the variety of being able to work with a lot of different companies, but it also allows me to be objective, something that is often difficult to do when you're within an organization and the politics of an organization. But specifically serving as a fractional chief of staff, I think that's a really important part of the services that I offer. It allows an organization the ability to get what they need, when they need it, how they need it, for how long they need it. So that they don't have the overhead of maybe a full-time executive if they're thinking of making it a full-time role, which I often hear, they can leverage my experience and skill sets to like better define what that role is, what the responsibilities are, develop new frameworks and processes, et cetera, and just make it really easy for somebody else if they would like to make that a full-time role to step in. And sometimes it's like, well, you actually don't need a chief of staff. What you need is to elevate this person, move this person over, so it can be a variety of different things, but the fractional thing is really important.
And you talked about kind of being a utility player, which I love that term. I think that's great. Obviously, when you think of, sports teams and different stuff like that, the utility players bring a certain level of impact to the team. How do
Yeah.
you think the role of chief of staff in particular, or how should that impact a company and help it move forward?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting question. My favorite answer is it depends. Like if you've ever worked in any industry, when somebody asks you something, you're like, well, it depends. And that's definitely the case here. I think that no two companies are the same. So no two chief of staffs are the same, or no two chief of staff engagements for me will look the same. But generally speaking, a chief of staff is like what I would consider a force multiplier for executives. And so somebody in that role would expand leadership capacity, can look at and address challenges within the organization that are organization wide, and support and develop the company through a transition or a growth phase. That's kind of the high level, but a lot of the times the chief of staff works directly with the CEO. But at Vida Nova, I wanted to sort of extend that to be a little bit more broad to whatever executive, there might be a particular executive or a set of executives, or it's a board that you're serving, because I really think that those services work well at any executive level. But I also work with organizations on consulting engagement. So it's a bit different from a true chief of staff role. But I kept the title kind of for both. I really like chief of staff because the skill sets are the same that make for a good consultant as they are for a chief of staff. But the consulting engagements differ a little bit, and the role of a consultant in those types of situations is usually going to be someone's going to be brought in when there's like a triggering event. I talk on my website a little bit about inflection points, and consulting engagements are going to have a little bit more specific focus. Like, they're going to focus specifically on developing and executing a strategic plan, operationalizing sales, cross team collaboration and alignment. So they'll have a little bit more narrow focus than like a chief of staff. And maybe I should explain inflection points. I realize that's
Yeah,
something that I
love to hear more
use.
about that.
For me, I think of inflection points as opportunity points. An inflection point is something that can go up or down, right? So I like to think of it as when a business is growing or tackling complex challenges, that's an inflection point. But other inflection points can be external. So we've seen in the past year, the economy is a little bit different. The competitive environment is different. Market conditions are different. And those are inflection points in a business where you got to do something differently. What got you here won't get you there. And that's
Yep.
usually where I come in, both as a fractional chief of staff and as a consultant.
And you talked about a couple of different challenges, but what are maybe the top 1 to 2 that you're seeing present right now with businesses in a tumultuous environment, a lot going on in the economy, a lot going on in different industries? What are some of those challenges you're seeing right now?
Well, if I had to name the top two, the first would be growth, right? Like, however that means for a company. Growth doesn't always mean financial gain. In most cases it does, but sometimes it doesn't. So there's an opportunity for growth or stagnation in growth kind of thing. And the second thing would be time. Quite frankly, like executives in companies, I mean, pretty much everyone I meet, but like in particular, executives are running from meeting to meeting, emails, they're putting out fires, they're working 70 hours a week. There's just no time and space to think strategically or to tackle larger problems or challenges. There's an inability to sort of like think holistically about the business and how the business is going to grow. It's more like I'm just kind of doing the things and I know the things are working, but like I don't have a whole view on it. So those would probably be the top things that I see. But I see other things like communication, resolving barriers to communication. How can I get my sales and marketing team to collaborate better? How and I look at it not in silos. So sometimes people are
Right.
like, oh, you should throw money at marketing, right? Which marketing is great. I've done marketing, but if you're not serving your clients well, then you might as well just go to the window and throw your money out the window.
Yeah.
Like we've got other things that are more important. And that's kind of that higher level visibility that I bring, where I can say, okay, well, this is the problem you think you're trying to solve, but let's dig a little bit deeper and really make sure that we're getting you where you want to go and solving the right problems in the right order.
Yep. Solving those other problems can help with the time and help with the growth example that you mentioned.
Well, nobody wants to just burn money. Nobody wants to just
Exactly.
like burn people
Exactly.
out or throw money out the window. So I think that's a really great to have the perspective of a consultant or a third party person come in to really look at it and to say, you know what, like you may not want to hear this, but like this is what I see, this is what I've seen in other businesses and organizations. And I'm looking around the corner for you. I'm helping you avoid, falling into a trap of doing something like, I talked to somebody who was like, yeah, we're about to spend $25,000 on this. And I was like, well, who's your buyer? And they didn't know. They didn't know how to answer that question. And I was like, you might as well just go throw that money out the window then if you don't really know. So lots of things ranging from customer success, operations, business management, sales and marketing, lots of different things that I touch on with clients. And the thing I love about being independent is that if I can't help you, I 100% can point you to somebody who can. And I love that. I love that sense of community and creating a partnership network and having those resources to be able to say, you know what, I think there's this other person who does this role, and I think that they would be better suited to handle this, or let's bring that person in to complement the work that we're doing together.
Right. No, I love it. I love it, Darcy. This has been so great to hear more about your perspective. And before we kind of sign off here, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
The best way is LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. If you're going to connect with me, make sure to put a note in the connection request. That's always really important for me to understand some context for why someone's reaching out to me. You can also reach me at Darcy at vitanovastrategy.com. That's VITANOVA strategy.com. And then there's contact forms on my website, which I check regularly. So any number of ways.
Awesome. Well, sincerely, a heartfelt congrats to you on what you're building and for officially launching Vida Nova. And thanks for all you do for the startup community, Darcy. I'm excited to watch you continue to grow and to help support your journey.
Great. I appreciate it. Thanks.